Hi everyone. So I read the chapters this week and watched the video assigned. I just wanted to give you some of my takeaways. I would say the first big takeaway is about the many parts that make up one's personality. So I think terminology is really important. I never really thought about the terminology and personality when discussing them as a layperson. Again, someone that hasn't taken a lot of social sciences, I just thought, okay, brain, that's what's going to decide your personality. But I realized that using the term brain would actually probably be incorrect, because as Dario Nardi pointed out, the brain is more just the actual organ, the toolbox is what he implied. In my note in his book, it's the physical organ. Then he goes on to refer to the mind, to which this is where I never really made the distinction. But he talks about the mind is where data happens, where procedures arrive. So there is the actions that we do every day, contrasting and comparing and analyzing and examining and deducing and everything. So those basically functions are part of the mind, while again the brain is simply the organ that it takes place in. And then the other interesting other aspects I found kind of that involve the personality are how many things affect it, and I'll get into later probably these in more detail, how these aspects I think put kind of a hole in personality tests, but one of them is context, which is the current situation. You have to take into consideration one's environment, people around that person, the tools available. It says here, which I thought was a really good point again by Nardi, that it says, unlike the brain, the mind extends outside of us to involve interaction with media and other people of collaborative thinking. So again, there's outside forces. I think that obviously it says here, but there's outside forces basically that influence a personality. And I would, similarly to context, the other component that Nardi mentioned was culture, which I also think is another big one. So the norms and practices of whether it be a social group or society at large, or even bigger, an example would be like Western and Eastern culture. And then lastly, part of it is the psyche, which again, I've heard that word used before, but really didn't know what it meant. And now I got a clarification, basically, that it is the brain and mind working together, kind of guiding beliefs and thoughts and things like that. So with this terminology in mind, I think it helped me a lot, because I was thinking about when it comes to personality types, the tests people can take and questions asked. So my first thing was, I know that I've been asked a lot, are you a left brain or right brain person? Because the left brain is associated with the analytical side of things, numbers, diagrams, while the right side is more impressions and patterns and tone of voice and things like that. And I think, whether saying I'm a right brain person or I'm a left brain person, I realize now how problematic that is, because after learning about all the different parts of the brain and how they're working together, you can't, you can't base someone's personality entirely off such broad descriptions. The brain is more than just two hemispheres. And then The other one I wanted to address was the Myers-Briggs test. So I took it and I ended up being a ENFP, so extroverted, intuitive feeling, prospecting. And I watched the video with Nardi, and he actually did talk about this personality type, and he said when he was looking at the brain activity, it's very active and excited, it's high. He referenced that all the regions of the brain work simultaneously except one, which was the left prefrontal lobe, which is goal focused. And why I find obviously that very interesting and, you know, fun to take those tests and kind of figure out kind of what person you are. Just like the question of, are you a left brain, right brain person? I do find this problematic as well. I would say an example is saying I'm an extrovert. I agree with that, but to an extent. Not all extroverts are going to be on a social level. They're not going to be equal. And again, putting myself in situations I've been in, I feel like I'm a social person, but my levels of sociability, they change, different scenarios. You know, whether it be when I'm grieving, I want to be alone for a little bit, and then I want to see people. When I'm happy, I want to see people. When I'm mad, I want to be alone. You know, my moods fluctuate basically. And then I'm an extrovert to an extent, I would say. When I'm around a lot of people I know, no matter the size, I do talk a lot. I get really excited. But if I'm in an insanely large group with literally no one I know, I would say I'm not an extrovert. I get nervous. And it also just depends on simple things like if I'm energized and had a good night's sleep versus when I'm tired. You know, when I'm tired, I don't want to talk to people. When I'm energized and ready to go, when I do stuff. And then referencing the different aspects that apply to one's personality when it comes to context and culture, I think those tests don't take those into account. They need to, again, just like the left brain, right brain question, I think the Myers-Briggs is too broad. So after reading everything, I think a question I came out with was, really, do personality labels work, honestly? I understand having a basis, but I am wondering if they maybe are harmful, and again, the base is too broad, and instead of emphasizing how broad they are, people kind of latch on to that specific idea. And then the other question I had was, if we're, you know, taking these tests and things like that on trying to figure out if we're extroverted or introverted, you know, all these things, then I'm pretty curious as actually if you can do some kind of test or something, find some way to determine maybe if people are more, who's more pessimistic or optimistic than others. So that was some of the questions I came up with. But basically, in summary, I do think that personality is a lot more complex than any of us can imagine. There's a lot of moving parts, and there is a lot of ways that people like to record or like to identify their personality. But I think that is very problematic, and I think while the broad basis is a good foundation, to take those as absolute fact and to apply those to everyone is really dangerous. But I'm excited to hear what everyone else says. I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks.